of ethnically diverse people. I don't like the term minority, though I use it because it's a legal indicator. So we are here this evening with Dr. Thompson, and we have decided to devote the first half of this program to a discussion of the hate crime and some of the violence that is being experienced in East County and Lakeside in particular. And we want to look at continued homicidal activity of law enforcement in areas around the country. We will follow that in the second half of this program with the discussion with the executive director of the San Diego City Commission on Gangs Prevention. Dr. Will be here. The leader of that activity, Dr. Gerald Brown, is the executive director. We invite you to join us if you like in terms of your comments or input at 858-251-6111. That's 858-251-6111. Or you may join us online at godradio1.com. With that being said, good evening, Dr. Thompson, and I'm glad to share this with you one more time.
Well, good evening, Dr. Warren. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. We're here in Southern California, where we are yet experiencing, some summer-like weather. Got a little bit cooler today, and as they said, it's going to get a little bit cooler on tomorrow. But the one thing that we are seeing is that even in one of the finest cities in America, we are still having some tragic news when it comes down to how we are still seeing racism and hate crimes alive and well in our city.
Yes, this is true, and it's unfortunate that we do see this happening. This is in face of the fact that Congress recently passed the anti-lynching bill, and they put all kinds of provisions in there that went beyond just putting a rope around a person's neck. Hate crimes were strengthened, those crimes that are against people based on their race or ethnicity, and they've added, of course, gender, LGBTQ, and other elements to it. And we've experienced this across the country. We know that African Americans, even though we are talking about the Asian American incident that took place over a year ago in Atlanta as a highlight of attacks on the Asian members of the Asian community, statistics show that African Americans still have the greatest number of hate crime scenarios, and especially here in the state of California. So all is not well in what would be America's finest city, or the place that would be the ideal model for the country.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, a lot of times when we talk about what is going on and the things that we're experiencing, it doesn't seem like the African American, we as African Americans, that people literally look and see all the things that are being done against us, all the hate crimes that are being done. It doesn't seem like they even want to see it or even acknowledge that it actually exists, but it does exist, and we literally are going to have to take some stance moving forward to make sure that we keep it prevalent. We make sure that we're just not emotionally protesting, but just really talking from facts. Now, I don't know if we're going to get down to this, to talking about the young lady who was stabbed.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
we will. And matter of fact, we want to set the stage by saying that last month we had a town hall meeting here, if you will, a program with the San Diego County District Attorney, Summer Steffen. And we had her staff members who specialize in dealing with hate crime issues and the prosecution of hate crimes offenders. We went into great detail with this. And so we have a situation in Lakeside, which is East County, and we have a situation where there's a community where a black family lives, and over a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago, there was an incident where a white family attacked members of this black family. When I said attack, 16-year-old white youth stabbed 16-year-old black girl. His 15-year-old white girlfriend tried to hit a member of the family with a pipe or a rod, and the mother intercepted the blow. The police came. There was an arrest made of the girl who was then released, ironically. The black girl who was stabbed was taken to the hospital, and she was diagnosed with a collapsed lung and punctured kidney, and yet she was sent home. And some members of the medical community are wondering how could that be when she should have been kept in the hospital at least for observation. And to add insult to injury, there was no effort made to even suture the stab wound. And this happened at Mercy Hospital. A couple of days later, we were successful in getting the family to take her to Rady Children because at her age, she's still under pediatric care. And so she was looked at and she was sent home. There was a demonstration out there in the community center as people from the district attorney's office were there and members of that community. And obviously there were some white members that weren't exactly happy about the black members, members of San Diego's community joining the BAPOC members that live out there in East County. And so that situation took place. And last Thursday was the opening of the annual rodeo season in Lakeside, which takes place every year. And so Saturday, for 4 days from Thursday through Sunday, Saturday, the families did a protest demonstration. In the meantime, the young man who had fled after the incident was arrested, and he was charged with attempted murder and a hate crime, which is an enhancement, if you will, of the attempted murder charge. The girl had been sent home. There was some real concerns expressed to the district attorney about that because if no more than the fact that she attempted to hit someone with the rod, there was both assault and battery, and we're looking at it, if they've been African American, everybody would have been in jail. It turns out that the father of the boy was there with two other adult males, and they weren't charged, and they saw what happened and didn't seem to make any effort to intervene. And so as of, I believe it was yesterday, the girl was taken into custody, and she was charged with attempted murder and the hate crime scenario. And the community is still pushing for the arrest of the adult males, even though it appears it was mistakenly told that they couldn't be arrested because they didn't engage. But we know under the hate crime enhancement statutes that that's not true, because not only did the stabbing and the assault take place, but the constant hurling of racial epitaphs against the black family clearly made this a hate crime situation. And so this past Saturday, there was a demonstration, a peaceful one as it was to be, and members of the family and of the black community marched in the same area of the community center in Lakeside. It's our understanding that they were met by people throwing rocks, throwing bottles at them, and hurling the N-word at them as well. And so there's still a push to have the district attorney look at arresting the males, because if you want a comparable kind of situation, I know each state is different, but if you look at what happened in Michigan, where this couple gave their son, their 15 or 16-year-old son, an AK-47, and he went to school and killed people. And so both of those parents were arrested and charged with murder because they're still responsible. So this situation heightens a problem there. The problem was exacerbated during the community meeting when a member of the sheriff's department, and Lakeside is under the sheriff's department since they don't have their own separate police force, used the F word in terms of cursing out a member of the family when they asked a question. And of course, then this deputy quickly disappeared. So we have some real problems, and they're not all restricted to Lakeside. And the other element here is that this young man that did the stabbing, he's been identified as having been affiliated with white supremacists and white nationalists. I like to remind people that when it comes to gang activity, blacks are called gangs, And white nationalists and white supremacists have rarely ever been called gangs, though in recent years they started in North County adding gang enhancements to the arrests. So this is a very serious issue that we have going on. And I don't think that those of us who don't live in East County or who are not affected daily, directly, should turn our backs on what's happening out there. The black families are under constant harassment. We understand that the whites had really ended up confusing this family with a different family that they'd had some words with a couple of days before. But often all of us look alike, and so then we get this benefit.
Well, I think that that's one of the things that I think that is really important for us to note is that from what I'm hearing is that it was this was not the family that they really meant to go after.
No, it wasn't. And this family had to go into protective custody after this situation happened. They had to be relocated. Supposedly, the property management of the units, the apartment complex, gave the white family 72 hours to move, to relocate. And I think they offered to move the black family to a different property. But that didn't solve the problem, as we're finding that these issues have been ongoing. Mm-hmm. And just as they've happened there, we've dealt with a Voice and Viewpoint. We've dealt with these issues in Oceanside. I remember some years ago we had an issue at Escondido where a black family owned land and gave an easement to whites to pass through their property to get to property that was behind them.
Wow.
And they didn't have to give them the easement. And one of the things that happened after this easement was given and people realized that it was this black family, I guess, they came and burned a cross on the yard of the white family. So the race thing is alive and well. And I don't think because some of us dwell in urban communities that we should start thinking that everything is okay.
Well, let me ask you this question, Dr. Warren. So help me with this, and because you have a legal background, right?
Yes.
All right. So if I drive someone to a place and they commit a crime and I cheer them on as they commit the crime, am I not aiding and abetting them to commit that crime?
Well, that's very important because the district attorney looks at it from the standpoint that aiding and abetting has a different legal standard. But what happens here is when you have the hate crime scenario, then that hate crime is an enhancement. And so under all of the elements of a hate crime, the calling or names or the participation in it, all those things come into play. And to me, in many instances, it's kind of like the felony murder rule in California, which says that if you drive somebody to the store and they go and say, I'm going to get a pack of cigarettes, but they go in there and rob the place and kill the cashier and come back and get in the car and you don't know, when they catch up with them, you get charged too because you were with them. An aiding and abetting element comes into play when you know what the person is doing and then you participate. Ironically, there is, like under Good Samaritan statutes, there's no legal obligation to help someone who's in difficulty. But this situation is so different in terms of the race and what happened there that it really should involve more taking place.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really disturbs me because, I've watched on the other hand where people have driven folks to fights and the families are fighting or whatever, and not only does the person that actually commits the felony crime, but even those that are participating in it are handcuffed or arrested because they've created this mayhem in this unrest in the community. I think that there's several things that disturbs me. One, that a boy or a young man attacks a young woman.
Yes.
See, everybody's not paying attention to that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're so quick to talk about, women's rights and the Me Too movement and everything else, but why are we not talking about this boy was so angry at this girl that he stabbed her? Now, if we say that the boy is supposed to be stronger, young man is supposed to be stronger and everything else, and he goes and attacks a young lady with a weapon.
Well,
What?
here's the issue, Dr. Thompson, and I'm glad you raised that point because we've seen pictures of lynchings from years ago, and we've seen the black victim hanging from a tree, the body burned, white people standing around taking pictures and everything, and theoretically, a lynch mob is all of them are guilty of the lynching. They're guilty of the
Mm-hmm.
murder. Now, the interesting thing about the hate scenario is that there is a psychological pattern that the perpetrators have to dehumanize the victims in order to justify the attack.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they treat them like human beings, like themselves, they wouldn't be able to. So you'll notice, like with the the API
Mm-hmm.
thing, the knocking down and beating of the man who
Mm-hmm.
died, the hitting of the woman on the sidewalk just because she's there. We've experienced all of this before. All we have to do is remember Mr. Bird in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
who was on his way home, 20 years ago, and a truckload of white boys grabbed him and tied him to the back of the truck and drug him until his body came apart.
Mm-hmm.
So, in all of these instances, the language and the attitude is that the victim is not a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not surprising then that this young man, obviously from the white supremacist nationalist environment that they seem to have lived and thrived in, that they would be programmed to see us as non-human beings, the same way they see the Jews, the same way they saw the Chaldeans following 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
when they were attacked because of their head wraps or their
Mm-hmm.
pieces.
Yeah. So let me say this, Dr. Warren, which is I'm very concerned about this because I was traumatized when I literally saw the wounds that was sustained by this young 16-year-old girl. This was not no little slice. This was not no cut. This was stab puncture wounds to the
Yeah.
point that they had to pack in, I don't know what they call it, gauze or whatever, to stop the bleeding. This
And
was deep cuts.
And that's why we don't understand why they sent her home without even suturing the wounds after that. And the graphic pictures of the wound are on where they went viral. They're on the internet.
Uh,
Okay, and so this is a part of the problem, and we need to pay very close attention to this because what we're talking about in terms of the mentality that goes with the hate crime is very much connected to the second part of our discussion, which goes to the white officer who killed the Congolese youth in Michigan, stopping him over some
okay.
frivolous
Before
car
we
stuff.
get there, Dr. Warren, I still need your legal mind right
Yes.
quick. So help me with this. They get charged with a hate crime. It is considered attempted murder with hate crime. Can they now also, after the criminal part is over, can they go after them civilly, and go after the parents or the father that drove the kid to do the damage?
Well, I always like to do this caveat so that I don't get accused of practicing law without a license. Um, and I mean, the being in the media and having been trained as an attorney, it makes it all keeps coming back to play the definitions and the whole scenario. The answer to your question is yes, they can bring a civil action against them for the harm that was suffered, just as much as Chris Rock could bring a civil action against Will Smith for slapping him.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the idea is that the act, which is a crime, is not against the individual as much as it is against society itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so some definitions come into play. When you touch someone without permission, that's battery if you're
Mm-hmm.
hitting. Assault is the matter of putting one in fear of being harmed. So we have all these elements coming to play,
Mm-hmm.
and there are remedies for both civil remedies because assault and battery is a tort action, which is a legal wrong, as well as a crime violation in itself.
Amen.
So all of this takes place, and there's a lot to it. And that's why on Black Men and Women United, as you know, we have these discussions. We have attorneys on there. We have the DA's office. We have members of the community. And I want to give a shout out really to Sister Tasha Williamson, who has been very active in terms of staying on top of all of these police issues that are coming up, because we continue to have them from in-depth custodies like the one we recently had. It's all just comes together, and it all points to a different standard being applied to black people.
Amen, amen. So now let's go. I just had to, take the chance and talk to the legal mind here. But let's go to the senseless shooting.
Well, we have a situation where a white officer stopped a young man. There was some issue, I think, but he was not as, I guess, as fluent in English as he needed to be, so he had some misunderstanding of what's happening to him. His license was in his car. There's some indication that he attempted to get it. Then the officer's body camera conveniently got disengaged.
Okay.
Then the next thing we see is a young man running away from the officer. The officer doesn't know that other people are videotaping what takes place. The officer knocks him down, face down on the ground, with his arm behind his back. We can see his left arm behind his back. We're assuming his right arm is there. The officer straddles him. The officer leans forward, reaches back, pulls out his weapon, and fires it. Now, it turns out that the family had an independent autopsy done, and it turns out that what the officer did was he shot him in the back of the head. Now, there is nothing about this man being face down on the ground that suggests he was a threat to this officer. Even though they said he took the taser and he ran, that still did not justify what was clearly an intentional kill shot. If you had to shoot him someplace, he could have shot him in the hip or in the leg that was back behind him. He would have felt it, whatever. But to shoot him in the back of the head is a conscious execution. The only thing missing was he didn't realize that there was somebody standing back behind him that was videotaping what he did. They hid his name. They put him on administrative leave. Pressure has been put on the police department. They finally identified him. I don't know if he's been charged yet, but this is an ongoing scenario. We got Breonna Taylor, where the officer gets tried for a bullet going into somebody else's apartment, but nobody gets tried for killing her in her own place. And they hit the wrong apartment in the first place. So then we have the sister that was killed in her house where she was in her apartment, in her house with the nephew or something, video games. The cop shot, through the window and killed him. So all over, we have a situation where it just seems to be, no matter how many George Floyds we have and how many marches and protests we have, we continue, just like we had in Minnesota, where the policewoman got a little bit of time for saying she thought she was reaching for her, taser when she got her gun, and the taser's obviously a different color. She gets a limited tap on the hand in terms of what takes place. So all of these things show that no matter how much we pass laws, there is a culture in the mind of law enforcement people that says that black folks are a danger, black folks are not human, and it's all right to kill black folks no matter what the feedback is.
Yeah, and the one sad thing about it is that, the cameras are on, and if we did not have cell phone cameras, if we did not have people being conscious to take video, we would find that so much stuff would still be pushed underneath.
We would have never had the conviction in the George Floyd case. And, we have the situation in North Carolina where they chased a man in his car and shot him through the car and killed him. And, it's just ongoing. Any kind of police contact seems to be a justifiable shoot-to-kill scenario. And so we wanted to, I don't know if we had any callers in this discussion, because we wanted people not only to hear, but we are too quiet as a community. When we think back in the past 2 years of the pandemic and the protests and demonstration, so many of those who were protesting George Floyd and all these other Breonna Taylors and other, these were young white youth and young white people that were involved. And that's the part that's shaking up America. That young whites are teaming up with young blacks. And we don't want to miss that. We don't want to get the impression that everybody white is a racist, but it's that older element that can't accept the change and that is trying to cling to yesterday. And they are the problem. I guess they're just not dying out fast enough.
Well, and the thing about it is that, and we allow them to continue to be who they are, and we give them safe haven. And I think that it's important that we make sure that people of that nature are uncomfortable no matter where they go, that there's no safe haven, no community that they can go in and feel like can freely be that way.
Well, hopefully this will be the case, Dr. Thompson, because we've seen a pattern. You know, when I had the Florida Tribune in Florida, we had a situation where a person had done something and the police chased this man into this apartment complex. And they thought that he went into this black woman's apartment. And so they knocked on her door. And when she opened her door and said that he wasn't there, then they just broke in to search her apartment. It turns out that she was law enforcement, that she was a prison guard. And so charges were brought against those officers. People came back and put spray painted ends on her door. And then they took the officer who did the breaking, the unauthorized entry, and removed him from the police force. But by the time the civil trial came, it turns out that they just made provisions for him to go to another county up north, and that they hired him again as a policeman.
Exactly.
And so that's what we have. We have a musical chairs with these people as opposed to just identifying them. Now, hopefully, some things are going to change in the city of San Diego with the Commission on Police Policy and Practices,
Okay.
and the subpoena power that's coming with it. And Dr. Brown, who's with us this evening, he wears two hats, and we want to identify him. He is a former executive director of the United African American Ministerial Action Council, former Marine, a very active person in the community for many years. That group played a major role annually in the gun buyback program that's been implemented in the southeastern San Diego, and he's now and has been through the last administration. He's a carryover with this present administration, and so we want to welcome you, Dr. Brown, and we want you to say briefly a word about the commission, because this commission, both the gang commission, as we refer to for shorthand, and who those members are and what it does, and then the CAB, which you've also worked with, because we need citizens to understand that these things are in place, even as we push for activating the Commission on Police Policies and Practices, the CPP. Welcome.
Oh, good evening, Dr. Thompson,
Good
and
evening.
also Dr. Warren. It is good to be with you this evening. Didn't know if I'd be here one way or the other, but thank God I am here with both of you gentlemen this evening. As you mentioned, Dr. Warren, I have the privilege of serving as the executive director of the Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations. It is an old board that's been around since the 1990s that was just revived several years ago. The Citizens Advisory Board on Police and Community Relations is there. It sounds so simple, but it's there for the community to have a voice in those actions that carry on into all communities in the city of San Diego. That board provides a way for a community to give their input and insight into the relations of law enforcement throughout the city of San Diego and throughout the county of San Diego, so that we could, in fact, build a relationship. We know that the relationship has been strained. It's almost been choked out, if you will, over the last couple of years, especially as you mentioned, Mr. Floyd and also Breonna Taylor. But we are working to revive where we can in fact have a relationship where the citizens can have input into what is going on in our communities, and especially in those communities that are south of the 8 that have for years been disenfranchised with no voice. The Citizens Advisory Board sits there to be able to bring folks in. We have a chair now, Samantha Jenkins, who you may know, that represents the 4th Council District here in San Diego, that is in fact the president and chair of the Citizens Advisory Board. And we have representatives on that board from every area of the city. And so we encourage citizens to call in, to let us know what's going in, to email me, to let us know so that we can put that information out there. And sometimes it's a good conversation. Sometimes they're a challenging conversation because at some point or another, both folks will get in the corner, but we have to try our best to bring people together. And so when Mayor Gloria came in, there was a lot of calls for, well, we don't need it anymore because we have CPP that's out there to investigate and look at policies and practices. But Mayor Gloria saw that we still needed an avenue to be able to have citizens come in and talk about their grievances, talk about those things that are going right and those things that are going wrong. And so that is the Citizens Advisory Board that I chair as the executive director. And the other commission that I chair is the Human Relations Commission, which has been here in San Diego for many years. And the commission focuses on discrimination issues, cases that deal with racism within the city of San Diego. But I will tell you that I have complaints from Chicago, from Nevada, from all over when people come in to tour our great city and they run into an issue where they think that they've been discriminated against. They are able to report online, and it is my responsibility to investigate those issues. And then once I've investigated it, turn it over to the board and also talk to the city attorney. We have a chairman on that board who is Miss Christine Rizzo, and she is an attorney by trade. And so we also have members of the community from every segment of the 9 districts that are here in the city of San Diego. Again, here's another avenue where the citizens of San Diego have the ability to come in and talk about those issues that so greatly affect them and keep them from progressing and moving forward. And so I find it both a privilege and an honor to be with both Dr. Thomason and both of you as well. And then I've also been on Black Men and Black Women United and watched as you brought issues and people, things that are real to the community to come in and talk about it. So hopefully this evening we can have that conversation.
Well, you didn't mention the third element, which was the Commission on Gang Prevention and Practices. And so I want you to hold that for a moment because
Okay,
I want to, in fairness to you, you're a pastor and you work very hard and you've always been very concerned about what you do. I must say in candor from my end that in the past, I know the Citizens Advisory has just been reinstituted, but the city human relations entity prior to this new administration and what is taking place now has, from my standpoint, never been what it could be. And I don't know, in the past, there was no staff that was given to it. There was no budget that was given to it. And yet you and those before you were expected to hold up these figureheads without the ability. And so one of the things that makes the CPP so different is there is a staff, there is a budget, there is subpoena power, there is the opportunity to go beyond the city attorney. I am not excited about our city attorney. I don't find that she has a heart and a concern for our community. When she was running for office last time, she was all over the place in terms of trying to convince us how much she cared. And during the past 3.5 going on 4 years she's been there, she made it clear at one point that she worked for the city. And I always found that was strange that she identifies as being counsel for the city council and the mayor, but yet it's the people that elected her separately, and she has some obligation to the people. I think that she feels very insulated and that she is covered and there's no threat. So, my question is under this new order, have they given you either a budget or any staff for these two entities that you chair?
Well, what I would say, Dr. Warren, and thank you for that question. We are at the present looking at a budget. As you know, the budget is coming forth as presented by the mayor, and we have asked for a permanent full-time executive director to be a part of that budget. And so we never know exactly what council is going to do this time, but it is hopeful. We've spoken with the council president as well to, in fact, have a full-time executive director for the Human Relations Commission. We have a full-time executive director for CAB, and so that's me. And then I'm also the interim executive director for HRC. But we are hoping that we will, in fact, get additional staff on so that we can, in fact, come to the fullest that this commission can go to.
Well, now, here's the problem, and tolerate me a few minutes, Dr. Thompson, because we just had Kim Desmond on, who is over equity. Is it equity and diversity or race and equity?
Race and equity.
And so I'm getting confused because we got race and equity, we got these two entities that you chair that are certainly overlap with that. The city also still has the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I think, that hasn't been abolished. And yet, when we've had these studies, Dr. Thompson, in terms of issues, we come out with all of these complaints, and we have a police department that really feels, no matter what elements we have, that they just free to do what they want to. We know we got a police chief who, I guess sometimes, he thinks he's in charge, and I guess he forgets that how his predecessor made the announcement that he worked at the pleasure of the mayor. And I don't think many people understand that in a strong mayor form of government, the mayor has the authority to fire the police chief. And I think that right now we have one too many assistant chiefs on the seventh floor, because we got one down there that looks like us, but he certainly doesn't relate to us. And I'm going to be very vocal if there's ever an effort made to make him chief of police, because being black does not make you, in appearance, does not make you worthy of the position. So you've got a lot of balls in the air here, Dr. Brown, and I don't know where the gang commission fits, because I always felt that the gang commission should have been replaced with a commission on youth equity and employment. And now the mayor has kind of embraced one of my ideas of having an entity in city government that hires youth and not have all of our youth employment policy farmed out to workforce partnership. And so how does the gang commission fit in this scenario, the prevention? Because, we got the DA dropping enhancements and trying to expunge things that were messed up. We have people that have records, Dr. Thompson, from cannabis, if you will, and now that cannabis is legal, those same people can't get permission to sell because they got convictions. So you want to speak to some of this, Dr. Brown?
I wish I could speak to all of it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not the gang expert. Pastor Sandoval, who is the executive director of the gangs. But what I will say is that as you begin to see these changes that are there up under a Mayor Gloria administration, you begin to see the Youth Commission, as you mentioned, Dr. Warren, you begin to see all these things that you talked about, youth getting employment, being a big issue. You start to see some of the changes that are happening. And one of the things we've seen an increase in violence, I'm told, not only here in San Diego, but across the nation. And so with the gang intervention and prevention has did is it's brought all those entities to the table. And so you have all the law enforcement at the table, and then you also have the community representatives from the 9 districts, and you have those folks at large that are still able to come to the table and have a discussion about this. And not only the law enforcement entities of the local folks like our DA and our police chief, our sheriff, and also our new probation chief, but also the U.S. attorneys are at the table. And so again, as was with Pastor Ricky, everyone is looking at how can we best serve the community and bring about some of the changes, as you've been talking about, with employment, with education, with all those different things that are needed in those communities that have been deprived of those issues. And so I think that it has taken some time, but I know that your voice has been heard, as well as Dr. Thompson. Our voice has been heard at City Hall. And those things that we were going through didn't happen overnight. And likewise, we're working little bit by little bit to bring in some of those suggestions and recommendations that you've made. And that is government working at its best when it listens to the citizens of the community. Because again, as you know, we have lived in the area where people have come down and told us what's good for us instead of coming down and saying, hey, what do you feel and what do you need to be better and to work in this society? And so I believe that Mayor Gloria has in fact did that. His office has in fact did that. And they're going to keep on doing that. And he continues to prove that we're doing some new things with gangs, with no shots fired, with all those programs out there to give our communities an opportunity to reach the best that they possibly can be.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, Dr. Warren. Dr. Brown, this you seem to have gotten a lot more piled on your plate with this current administration. My question would be is that if you were to have, you know how they have the 12-step program, if you were to outline, your top 5 or 6 things that you would like to accomplish in the next year or so, what would those accomplishments be, and what would be the direction that you would need support in?
Well, with and you are 1,000% right, Dr. Thompson. I do have a little bit more on my plate, and unfortunately, I don't know better. As a former military person, what you give me, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna use it, and as Black folks having been raised down in Louisiana, we take everything that's left over and we make gumbo. And so again, the gumbo that I'm looking at here with the CAB, for example, we're looking at more community activities, being involved in community, getting law enforcement to get out into communities, to get out of their cars and get to know the people that's in the community. We found that taking a look at other places where law enforcement has actually did community policing, not the community policing where it has been described, where, you come to a meeting, you hear what's said, and you go back and do everything else, but actually getting to know the people of the community and keeping law enforcement that's working in the community, keeping them in an area without rotating them around. We made, as Dr. Warren may know, we made 30 recommendations. We being the CAB, the Citizen Advisory Board, made 30 recommendations to the last administration. And of course, also to the San Diego Police Department. We are taking a look at how we can better work with San Diego Police Department and get people involved in what's going on in those local substations. Bring people in, talk to people. Don't be as quick to arrest people as folks have been in the past. And so we're looking at better and stronger engagement as we go forth in this year and the year to come. I think that you will find with Ms. Jenkins as the chair that you will have more community involvement. And that, I mean, you'll have more community organizations out there that may not have had a voice in the past that will have a voice going forward. Because what I'm finding out and what I found out over the last 3-4 years that I've been there is that some of the things that we're experiencing in our community, they also are experiencing in other communities throughout San Diego. And so how do we bring everyone to the table for everyone to have a voice? And then not only to come in to have a voice, but for folks to listen and for those things to get to the mayor and to the police chief and start to see measurable change.
Well, let me just throw some things out here there, because that's a lot being said. And I always like for people to know that we have institutional memory. And when you talk
I
about
know you do.
policing, former Lieutenant Michael Cash had a master plan for community policing. And San Diego didn't want to embrace it under his past police chief. And they wanted to take his ideas. They still took some of it. I cautioned him to not give his plan because I knew they would take it and use it and not give him credit for it. And he ended up being hired as a director of public safety for a community up north, and it turned out to be a very good experience for him that he was able to do that. But the statistics show that there isn't that the crime is not highest in our community, Dr. Thompson, and yet we still have these stops out there with the cops. And the big observation I want to make is you mentioned substations, and it tickles me every time I hear the term. This is the only major city I know of that has police substations that operate from 9 to 5 and lock up at sundown. Now, a substation is supposed to be a 24-hour a continuation of the public safety service of the police department. San Diego never got the memo. And this is the only city I know that every substation is locked down. If you go there, you the buzzer, nobody's gonna come to the door. But you can't be talking about community policing where you've got the local elements padlocked because it's sundown. That's just like the grocery stores. These stores in San Diego, for some reason, at 9 o'clock, they close one of the entrances. I don't know where that idea comes from, because it's not going to stop anybody if they want to rob the place. But it's just we just got little village mentalities here while we try to say we're a big city.
Now, Dr. Warren, I'm gonna caution you. Now, when you lock the other doors and there's only one door for to get in, that is the crime deterrent of that. That is the epitome of great planning. Because if you
It's
see them
also
come
a
in, with,
violation of the fire marshal's rules too, but nobody says anything.
if you say they're gonna come to this one door, get the camera on that door. Now we can't stop them, but at least we'll see.
But they do it so religiously.
Yeah.
It's gotten better over when I came here 35, 40 years ago, because everything shut down at 9 o'clock, just like it was a little village. You couldn't find anything. So it's gotten better, but it's still the mentality of the police department. They keep using the term community policing, but they don't mean it. It's not happening.
So I want to come to you, Dr. Brown, and say, let's talk about your relationship with our current police department and how receptive they are in some of the strategies that you're trying to get them to implement.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me go back, if I could, Dr. Thompson, to Dr. Warren's comments. If you recall, Dr. Warren, I was at those meetings with Chief Cash, and of course he had been with the San Diego Police Department. I think he had been promoted all the way up to captain, and then he went over to Southwestern and has moved up. And again,
well, remember why he left? Okay, he became ill. He went out. Thank you. He did become a captain, but when he got well and came back, Lansdowne only wanted to let him come back as a lieutenant, which was ridiculous because that was a step down. And that's why he ended up going to Southwestern and from there out of state. So let's just keep this racism on the table.
And I share with you that I would have never agreed to that, to take a step back and everything else after I had been up and been a captain. But going on, and I was there for those meetings when you told him and you mentioned to him not to give that plan. And that's one of the things that's happened to our community is that we've given people plans, they've taken those plans, they've utilized those plans, okay, and then we get left out, And so with CAB, with the Citizen Advisory Board, we've given those recommendations. The police department has come back and said that they have taken some of the recommendations, okay, but they couldn't do some because of legal restraints that were there, and others were already implemented. And so I'll give you one that you mentioned, Dr. Warren. You talked a little bit about pretext stops, if I was listening correctly to you, okay? And one of the issues that Dr. Thompson, is that we have what seems to be an overly amount of stops in our community for one reason or another. Well, as Dr. Warren knows, the Supreme Court ruled that pretext stops were legal, all right, out of a case out of Washington, D.C. However, when you go across the United States and you take a look at who's being stopped, and I've also received calls from many folks that are stopped because they know that I work, in fact, with law enforcement in relationship of having a relationship with law enforcement to talk about them being stopped. And I've had people that have been stopped and all of the equipment, one gentleman was a DJ, all of the equipment was taken out of the car, searched and then put back in the car, right? And then the officers left. And I don't know if that was from San Diego Police Department, if that was from the Highway Patrol, or the sheriffs, or whomever. But the gentleman's wife and himself called me, and they were very upset about that. Well, that's just one incident. Okay, that's here in San Diego. That's one incident that happens. But it continues to happen over and over again, driving down the street, and we get pulled over. And as I tell the officers, I've been pulled over 30 times, thereabouts. Okay, I'm just giving you a number. I've been taken out of the car at gunpoint. I've been put on the ground. I've been handcuffed. All right. I've been thrown in the back of police car.
But what did you do?
Car.
What did you do, Dr. Brown? You must have done something for them to treat you like that, other than just being black, right?
I was driving at night. Driving at night, and the person that stopped me asked the question. The first question was asked was, "Do you have a gun in the car?" And my answer should have been no. But being honest, okay, and being transparent, that nasty word that we use, I said yes. And so the next thing I know, my street was blocked off. Helicopters were overhead, and out the back, and 3 police officers from the front came, and 3 police officers from the back came, and driver with one hand dropped the keys out of the car. Driver with that hand opened up the door. Driver take 3 steps to the left. Driver interlock your hands behind your head. All right, face to front. Driver, get down on your knees.
Was your gun legal, Dr. Brown?
Yes, sir. It was legal. It was registered. And they said, well, we heard that this had been fired off, a gun had been fired off in the community. I said, well, why would I tell you that I have a gun in the car if I just fired it off in the community?
But what was the reason for stopping? What was the reason for stopping you?
The reason for stopping me was he saw me turn the corner. And you know what? And really, he never gave me a reason for stopping.
See?
He just stopped me and said, do you have a gun in the car?
See.
Long story short, I got thrown in the back of the car. And they said, well, where's your gun at? I said, well, it's in my trunk. Well, in your trunk where? I said, it's in my bag. I said, it's next to a book called God's Promises. And so they went in there and they got the gun out the back. They got the ammo out of my little thing right there. And I'm back there handcuffed. I'm in front of my house where all my neighbors are out and everything. And then after they found that and they found my permit there in the car, the guy said to me, he said, well, we're not going to say we're sorry. And by that time, I was riled up enough to say, you don't have to say you're sorry. Just give me my stuff and let me go. And so, again, I know that's happened to me. I know I've been all across the country, and the same thing has happened to me. But that happened to me here in San Diego. But to go back to Dr. Thompson's question about the relationship with law enforcement has taken a look at the recommendations of CAB. And as I said earlier, some they came back and they agreed with, some they said they just can't do. And the issue of pretext stops will be a continuous stop. We even have folks that have asked for a moratorium on those pretext stops. That hasn't come about. I understand that it is a tool that's used for high crime areas to stop folks, okay, if they have guns. And of course, San Diego PD has, over the last 2 or 3 years, taken about 2,700 guns off the street. And what was told to me is that if we stop that, then what will happen is we won't have that tool anymore. But one person told me, well, if we stop doing pretext stop, then we'll start doing something else, to stop folks. I know that folks in other areas of the city have said that they don't want pretext stops to stop. But I do know that, again, that when I see a police car behind me with all the relationships that I have, my heart skips a beat. I have 6 children. and all of them have been stopped by the police, whether it's the Highway Patrol, whether it's the San Diego PD, whether it's the Sheriff Department. They've all been stopped by the police. And I go back to say, this can't be coincidental that I mean, just Browns just look like we need to be stopped by the police.
It's called, and we're running out of time too, but it's called Living While Black. Number one is what it's called, and I think that we're going to have you back and continue this discussion because there's so much more to it. And we already got all of the statistics in terms of profiling, driving while black, all the studies, all the data is in. This is the same police department that says it wants ethnic participation in recruitment, but they fail to advertise any of their job vacancies with us. Just like the city's fire department, and last July there was a major story done in the UT about this. I have never, in the 30-some years that I've published The Voice and Viewpoint, I have never had ad from the San Diego Fire Department seeking to recruit black members for the fire department. And yet, during that time, we've had a black fire chief. We've had all kinds of black or people of color, I say, people who look black as chiefs and assistant chiefs and battalion chiefs, but never one time. And yet, that's a coveted department and a coveted position in most cities, and we're left out of it here. So we're going to really have to come back. Dr. Thompson, did you have any comments? Because the time is getting away, and
Yeah.
we got so much more to talk about, Reverend Brown, but we're going to get back to you.
Yeah, one of the things, I know the job is not easy. I know that you're what they say, paddling upstream. The thing that we would just encourage is that as we move forward, for the positions that people have in this season, that we literally see effective change. And when we have more voices speaking the same thing over and over again, eventually they can't ignore it. And I think that the mayor has put together a team of people that are going to be very real and very transparent. And as you know yourself, you're not afraid of controversy.
No, I'm not.
You will step into it, and you'll step into it like the Marine that you are and the man of God that you are. And we're just encouraging you as you go forth that you're not by yourself, that the community wants to stand with you. We just need to make sure that as we stand, that there are voices that are looking at when people say, well, it can't be done, then they will say, well, since you say it can't be done, let me show you how it can be done. So that since you can't fathom this, it's very easy if you want to recruit African-American people, put your ads at the Voice and Viewpoint, GOD Radio, put your ads at the mosque and this and that, and you will find that you will be able to get more people of color. But if you don't do that, then you can't say that you're really trying to do certain things.
That is so true. And thank you, Dr. Thompson and Dr. Warren, for saying that. And my heart will always be to promote us, and again, as a minister, of course, I work with everybody. But again, I see the disparity that is there and that continues to be there, and I believe that we have an opportunity. Some things I can say and some things I can't say. And I have to take after Dr. Warren in the fact that he said it all. He will say it all no matter what, no matter who he's in front of. And so I just wanted to say, I'm not going to call him Dr. Daddy tonight, like my boss.
He had to go there, didn't he?
Yeah, I did have to go
there.
But I love both of you gentlemen. I appreciate you, through the good times, through the bad times, because I see you working in the community to do something for us. And for us, I mean, for all of us that have been fighting forever and a day. And I don't take it for granted that I'm here. And the only reason why I'm here is because of Dr. Warren and Dr. Thompson. And I realize that in the other folks that, again, I stand on some shoulders, and I know I'm a heavy guy to stand on those shoulders, but the shoulders that are under me are the ones that I really stand on, And so again, whether I'm with the city or whether I'm not, I'm always going to stand there. I'm always going to be the voice that fights for us in the room, And I know I'm quiet sometimes. I'm quiet because I'm listening and I'm learning. And so thank you both for the opportunity this evening. And I pray for your continual success in everything that y'all do.
Well, we thank you, and let me tell you, you have not been quiet tonight, so that must have been another time.
Well,
But thank you.
with that being said, this is from the desk of the editor. We want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We look forward to talking to you again next week. We got some more great topics. And if you, Dr. Brown, can you tell people if they want to get in contact with you, how can they contact you?
Sure. You can either email me at gbrown@sandiego.gov, or you can call me on my personal phone. This is not the city's phone. This is my phone. It is 619-964-1064, 619-964-1064. And you can call me anytime. That's what pastors do, okay? We're available anytime. Now, I just tell you, if you call me after 11 o'clock, I may have taken my medicine by then. I won't be responsible for what I say. Hey, but you can call me nonetheless. That is my personal number, and I don't mind giving it out because that's who we are, and we're here to serve the entire community and the entire city of San Diego.
Thank you so much, Reverend Brown.